After almost 2 decades behind bars, 35-year-old Sheldon Thomas walked out of a Brooklyn, New York courtroom this month exonerated of murder.
Thomas was wrongfully convicted and wrongfully arrested in 2004 when an eyewitness pointed to a photo of another man with the same name who was not involved in the case at all, we must note, out of an array of photos. I spoke with Thomas just days, less than a week after his release, in his first TV interview.
Did you ever feel like they were targeting you specifically?
Most definitely.
It should have been the other way around. You're innocent until proven guilty.
From my lenses, where I see life, it's always like that for people like me. For people that look like me, it's always like that. You're guilty until you actually prove that you're innocent.
Nearly 2 decades later, he finally stepped into what still feels like a mirage of freedom.
I haven't even cried yet since I've been home. Like, I haven't even got to the point where it actually hit me. I still have dreams about being in prison. I'm scared to go to sleep as the days go by. It dawns on me a little bit more, a little bit more.
So powerfully emotional. Joining us here in Studio 57 is William Kastin. You saw him getting that hug there on film. He is the assistant attorney in charge at Appellate Advocates. It's really great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, Bill, it's so good to see you again. There's something that I took away from this story, having spoken to you and to Sheldon Thomas, and that is that when somebody is convicted, it is nearly impossible to overturn that conviction. You and Leslie Resinger from the Last Resort Exoneration Project worked with him for a decade and a half. You lost all of your appeals, and it wasn't until this conviction review unit was started at the DA's office in Brooklyn that he was exonerated.
That's correct.
What needs to happen?
What needs to happen are a whole host of changes to the system. We need more conviction review units across the nation. I think every district attorney's office should have a conviction review unit in-house or something local within that community, because mistakes happen. People are fallible. Juries are not perfect, judges aren't perfect, attorneys aren't perfect. There needs to be a check on the system. When I filed the appeal in 2008, raising grounds that the conviction review unit ultimately agreed were valid, Ms. Reisinger did substantial litigation in state court and federal court that the conviction review unit justifiably said that should have been remedied at that point. So there needs to be more resources, not only to conviction review units, but also to public defenders. My office is a public defender, the Appellate Advocates, and we simply don't have the resources to investigate all of these convictions. Just in the past month, in the past 4 months, there have been 3 exonerations in New York City. Besides Mr. Thomas, the conviction review unit exonerated another individual last week, and a colleague of mine at Appellate Advocates had someone exonerated in Queens. So if that's happening in New York City in just 3 to 4 months, you can imagine how widespread the problem is.
And I'm imagining that for folks like Mr. Thomas, in his case, he was 18 when he went behind bars with this wrongful conviction.
Right, he was 17.
And he's coming out now, nearly 20 years later, an adult. How is he acclimating to having spent half of his life behind bars, and how is he making ends meet?
Well, so when an individual is exonerated, when they walk out of the courthouse, there are no resources in place. It's even worse than someone who was convicted and served their time justifiably, because at least then there are housing resources, reentry services. Mr. Thomas, when he walked out of the courthouse, had only the belongings that he was wearing. He was actually wearing my shirt and tie to court. His belongings were at Attica and still have not been received and sent to my office. That's why we set up a GoFundMe in his name, because he needs these resources. He has no health insurance. He has no housing. He has no employment. He didn't have eyeglasses at the exoneration, and I took him to my eye doctor, who was kind enough to give him a full exam and eyeglasses because they broke 6 months ago. So when he was in court to be exonerated, he actually did not see the face of the judge. These are individuals who, once they're exonerated and released to the public, they're just left to fend for themselves. And it's mind-blowing.
And there's no recourse, or there's nothing that's provided for him after being wrongfully convicted?
Not immediately, no.
Until he can sue eventually, and then that's a whole process that, as he told us, he's not even close to being prepared to face.
He has to focus on adjusting. I mean, this is someone who, when he went into prison in 2004, smartphones did not exist. To us, it's very common. I had to show him how to use a smartphone. Took him shopping for clothing. He was jarred by the price of a shirt because when he last was in a store, a shirt was more than $22, and I had to explain to him, this is not expensive. This is actually reasonable. So he's adjusting to everything. I mean, everything. He's used to being told what to do every day. He has to fend for himself. He has to see doctors and dentists, which he's not gotten medical treatment adequately in prison. That's his priority right now.
Yeah, and the great deal of trauma that he endured, he now has to deal with. Bill, thank you so much for sitting with us once again.
Thank you. I
your
appreciate
work.
it. Thank you.